I'm Robyn Walker, and welcome to another episode of Conversations for a Better World. As you know, Conversations for a Better World is exactly what it says it is. It's having guests on here, like this amazing man in front of me. Robert, please introduce yourself.
My name is Robyn Pradolin, Executive Director of Housing All Australians and a Compassionate Capitalist.
That was the thing that actually grabbed me when I heard your interview on the ABC radio. So what is a compassionate capitalist? Because it's almost like an oxymoron.
Well, many people have said it's an oxymoron, yet the whole world's created by people that have businesses. And if those businesses are successful, they go into philanthropy. And philanthropy is compassionate capitalism. And sometimes, I know the word capitalism has got some bad baggage.
Yep.
And probably justifiable for the 5% that do it, but the majority actually care, especially in this country here. So I was just saying to my daughter that it's evolved over a period of time where at the beginning it was all about how does business influence the housing discussion. And then through that we did one-page strategy, which is about a pop-up shelter, about using existing buildings and getting pro bono support from the private sector. And when we first started, we thought maybe there's other people out there like us. I'm inundated by the private sector interest, inundated. And through that evolution, we've coined the term compassionate capitalism. Profit and purpose are not mutually exclusive. And if you do things well, you can then give back to society. And at the end of the day, that's what turns me on, to be quite frank with you, is do the right thing all your life. Tell the truth as hard as it is sometimes, because the main thing about telling the truth, you always remember what you said. And that's just part of a philosophy.
I like that. Say that again.
If you tell the truth, you can always remember what you said. You tell someone a lie, you've got to be very careful, because you must say the same lie all the time. That becomes very hard.
Wow, I like that. Let's go back to the beginning, because you haven't always been the founder.
Well, I was a property developer. That's really where, in fact, ever since I was 3, I always built. So my kids have heard the story that I said, well, surely you know what you want to do.
Since you were 3?
Well, I built my first cubby house.
At 3?
Yeah. I always used to like building. And I said to my kids, surely you know what to do. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 3. And I realised that I'm the odd one out, because I think people don't necessarily do. So I feel like I haven't worked many days in my life, because I've always done what I've liked and people have paid me for it. And that continues what I'm doing now. I still work, but you must be value aligned with me now. I've got a no dickheads policy at this stage of my career, and it's all about affordable housing and trying to change the landscape.
I actually call it no dickhead behaviour. Yeah.
Same thing.
I got to throw that one in there. All my friends know that. So let's just go back. You also were studying to be an engineer.
I am qualified as an engineer,
Yeah.
civil engineer.
Yeah.
But after 12 months of sitting in an office, I realised that wasn't for me. I meant to be out there. So I did a bit of building myself and registered builder, built my first set of units when I was 23, and that started off a bit of the building career. And so then I did an MBA and a few other things, and I just into corporate life. Yeah.
When did homelessness start to become a passion though? Like, what was there something in your childhood? Did you know someone, a schoolmate? What triggered that?
It wasn't homelessness per se. It was actually housing and housing affordability.
Right.
And I've always been keen in affordability. And then I did my career, and I was on Property Council, HIA, UDI, all the industry organisations, because I actually wanted to get out there and get sort of known to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And at Australand, which became Fraser's, we were the successful bidder, and I was a builder and developer for the Commonwealth Games Village in Melbourne, where we built the Games Village. And as part of that, 20% of the site had to be for a social affordable housing, but as a delivery. No engagement, just you've got to do 20% at a point in time. And then there's another project in Melbourne.
Woo, hang on.
Yeah.
Woo. So when did you start the Games one? How long before?
That was 2004 to 5. Yeah, we had to build the Games Village in Parkville.
Right.
And then part of that was obviously the village for the athletes. And as part of the post-delivery, because it's actually 20 years after that, they're just finishing the last couple of buildings now. So you have a long development tail.
Okay.
And through that, you must supply 20% of public and social housing to a community housing provider. So that was my little first exposure.
Yep.
But then we also did the Carlton housing redevelopment in Victoria. which was again about developing some of the housing estates that the government had, and we had to deliver a building or buildings, 247 social houses for a fixed price for government. So my involvement was really just hands off, right? So I was really just starting to get engaged. And then sort of I started learning a bit. I sat on a few panels with a few community people, in fact, an academic from Melbourne University, and I have the view sometimes academics are too theoretical and not practical. And sometimes we're probably too practical and not sort of inquisitive enough.
It's finding the balance between right and left, isn't it? Yeah.
So I got involved with Melbourne University for quite a long time. We started to sort of test some of these sort of theories, even though I knew what the outcome was going to be. The first theory was, why aren't families living in the city? I said, well, it's too bloody expensive to be starting with. So they had to go through a 2-year learning exercise to realise what, to me, is pretty obvious, that families can't live in the city because it's just too expensive for them to do that. But through that, you started to learn other things and get exposed to other things. And I remember one of those, they brought a guy called Mark Jarr, who's a financier from New York, over. And one of the things that Mark said stuck in my mind, in New York, we see police nurses as key infrastructure. And I hadn't thought of it before, which is why we're now prosecuting that we believe housing is fundamental economic infrastructure for a future prosperous Australia. We subsidise roads, hospitals and schools, but we never subsidise key worker and social housing. And in fact, the country's been allowed to deteriorate to about 3.9% of our housing stock is social housing. Victoria's is actually less than the national average. And in Europe, it's a very different story. So we've been sort of slowly decreasing and making that housing stress for a greater portion of the population, which I think is heading for civil unrest at a point in time. And through that is homelessness. And that's sort of the end result. And part of this is a continual learning. Because if you look at the housing continuum, and to make it simple, there's the market housing which people actually buy, they can afford to buy. Everything below that is subsidised.
Yeah.
So even now key workers in our cities are above 30% of their income for housing.
And that's been all that for a while, hasn't it?
Well, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that. But over 30% of income, you're in housing stress. That's the global sort of term. And if our key workers are going increasingly in housing stress, that's going to mean homelessness will only increase. So to me, homelessness is the canary in the coal mine to a much bigger issue in our whole housing continuum. Unless we go upstream and stop people falling into that trap,
I love that saying.
homelessness is going to go through the roof.
Do you know what that saying is?
No.
It was Desmond Tutu. He said something like, it's not just pulling the people out of the river, it's going upstream to find out why they're falling in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't do enough of that because that forward thinking is outside of election cycle. Surprise, surprise. So this political self-interest is not there, which is why our marketing objective is we want to create respectful unrest by educating people about what they don't know. Because without respectful unrest, there is never any political self-interest. And that's the game we play.
Well, let's get to, so did you give up your development career, so to speak, to start up?
Well, just nearly 10 years ago now, I left Fraser's when I was still young, and I still feel I'm very young, to try and disrupt this space a bit.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that meant, to be quite frank with you.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was a cup of coffee with my daughter at De Grey Street in Melbourne, right opposite Flinders Street Station, that sort of started the whole thing off. A homeless guy came to us and asked us for some money for that night. So we gave him a few coins, but it started a conversation. Because a few nights earlier in one of the news channels, there was a story about how the Grand Hall above Melbourne's icon, Flinders Street Station, had stayed empty for 10 years. Yet below it, we had people sleeping rough. Since that day, I then started talking with Launch Housing and City of Melbourne. I said, let's just find some old office buildings, at least to take people out of the weather. And one day I received a phone call from City of Melbourne, said, look, the ABC News has heard the idea and they like it, they want to run a story.
How did they hear it?
Don't know. City of Melbourne discussion. I'm not sure. I haven't. In fact, the reporter's actually a nice friend now. I should actually ask him. But anyway, so I always used to ring people back during my career. Always rang the journalists back, irrespective of they had a comment to say on the record or not. So I rang Guy Stainer back. He now reads the news in Tasmania. And I said, look, I haven't found a building yet, so I've got nothing to show you. He said, don't worry about that. Because at the time, the ABC headquarters in South Bank was undergoing renovation. He said, let's pretend that's one of the empty buildings. So we shot the news story in the ABC headquarters going on renovation. So on the news that night, and then I was on Neil Mitchell, who's a radio presenter in Victoria. We were on talkback for 30 minutes. Then after that, I started getting phone calls from all range of people, from a very wealthy family to a homeless guy that found me on LinkedIn. And he said something like, I'm one of the great unwashed, but thank you for trying, and everything in between. And they all said roughly the same thing. We know we've got a problem. Just tell us what you want us to do. But one of those people was an ex-Rotarian, David Gorman, who was on the Rotary Club with me when I was in St Kilda. He said, Rob, look, I'm on an aged care provider we've just built a new building. And the old one of 52 rooms is sitting empty.
Whoa.
Does that suit your model? I said, yeah, sure it does. So
I'm going to ask a question.
yeah, tell me.
So when you heard 52 rooms,
Yeah.
like, because you're a very calm guy, but what was,
Nothing. This is practical. This is just get shit done, right? So great. Now, there's a story because we started to approach them. We approached the board with Launch Housing, with Heather Host, who's now the rental commissioner, and we approached them, and they thought we were going to put people in there that are on drugs, like the man with ice. And anyway, and then we started to whittle it down to a non-threatening group, which happened to be women over 50. And so we agreed to put women over 50 in there, and we refurbished 52 rooms with the amazing help of Metricon and their staff, and we gave it to the YWCA for vulnerable women.
How long did it take roughly from where to go? From when you got the call to when women...
Again, time blurs for me, but I'd say probably it could have been easy 8 months. Right?
Which isn't a long time.
It's not a long time, but it is for an impatient man. Right? So I've got to put it all in
And
perspective.
if you're homeless, 8 months is a long time.
Oh, yeah. And I'll go back to and again, the board said, look, we're not sure how long the building is empty, but we want to refurbish it, so we can only do a short-term lease of maybe a couple of years. And I remember Jan Berryman, who was the CEO at the time of YWCA, and she's now the CEO of Port Phillip Housing. And she said, Rob, 12 months of shelter is better than no months of shelter. So we did the work. We do it the same way as in the private sector. There's a contract. Everything's properly, because it has to be done through safety and a whole range of things. So there's a contract between the owner and the YWCA for peppercorn rent, because it has to be peppercorn. Anyway, that 2-year lease is now to year 7. They still haven't got the money to refurbish, and the building would have been lying empty for that long, and we could have not used it. Right? And over 4 years, because we haven't done the 4-year survey, over 4 years, the YWCA have helped over 140 women stabilise their lives at zero capital cost to government.
Wow. And also how that filters out to their children, their grandchildren.
It's all a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Right? We don't quantify the other stuff.
Yeah.
And that was the basis of a documentary which we helped fund that Margot Robbie narrated called Undercover. But we can come back to that at the end. But it's all through educating people about what they don't know. Because as a man, I was ashamed to realise that women over 50 are the fastest growing cohort of homeless in this country. And the more people understand, especially more men that understand that, my reaction was, how the hell do we let that happen? And we have to start changing it. And as I said earlier, we thought maybe there was a few people out there, well, we're inundated by private sector participants. So anyway, so that journey continued, and that was done, and that wasn't under Housing All Australians, that was just me influencing the outcomes. And then I met through my now wife, a lady called Lisa Kingman. He said, Rob, because I started talking about these ideas I had, I've got to sit you down and put a 1-page strategy together, which we did. So we put a 1-page strategy with 4 simple pillars, using existing infrastructure, which is the existing buildings. The economic analysis, because we are, through business, we've got to look at this with an economic lens, a social lens, because there's enough doing that. Third one is we must find a new way to engage the private sector in delivering this, and we must also utilise church land, because church land is an unused piece of asset across the country in very, very great locations.
Can you give an idea of how much is unused?
Tens of billions.
Really?
Yes. In fact, when I was walking here, and I used to be on the Salvation Army Housing Board, there's a Salvation Army site in the middle of Sydney. Now, that's worth a lot of money. Now, they do great work, and they all do great work, but how do we leverage the existing property to best use and facilitate for the betterment of the community?
Yeah.
So we are discussing this with Faith Housing Alliance that's currently led by Rob Stokes. We're looking to get some form of agreement together, because together we can actually mobilise the private sector to do good.
One of the things you're talking about with that, the first one, and it's kind of alluding to what people see as the great unwashed, and you had used that term. What's the perception of the general public about someone who's homeless? What's the...
To be frank, they're intimidating.
Yeah.
They're concerned. They're scared.
Yeah, of?
Of either being attacked or being... We always have a risk-averse approach, and when something makes us feel uncomfortable, we don't want to really engage. Yet some of them have got, their stories are really just a sliding door moment for most of us, right? And so, again, there's an education piece there not to be too concerned. But the drug issue that's happening in this country makes things worse, because you assume that everyone is like that. So it is perception, but perception rules.
Yeah. Just on that then, because how long ago was it that we closed down all the asylums? That was in the 90s, I think?
Yeah, it was quite a while ago, which didn't help things.
Yes, because we closed them down, and yes, that needed to happen, but we didn't necessarily provide housing for these people or the helping hand for them to move back into society. I mean, it's not unlike, for example, when people have been in jail. And if someone's been in jail for a long time, I've taken my trainings into jail, so this is another pet project. Yes, they get a helping hand, but if they can't get a job because they've got the stigma, and then they can't get housing, apparently some of them will actually do another small crime to get back into safety.
Yeah. No, I've heard that story. And housing becomes the fundamental human need.
Yes.
Because without it, we have unintended human consequences.
Yes.
That is the reality. But just go back to your asylum thing. It's more, I thought it was just about providing housing. What I learned is that housing is only the small part. It's the wraparound services. If someone's got some mental issues, the housing doesn't do it. It's the combination of both, but you must have that personal support to help you through that phase of life. Because without that, it's all about shelter. It's about that combination. You know, initially when we started this journey, we thought it was all about providing shelter, because we come from the development industry. It's all about providing the home. But what I learned through this whole process, that the wraparound services, the care by the YWCA, the Salvation Army, or all the other non-for-profits, is actually much more important, because you need that to get yourself through that part of life.
So what sort of care are you talking about?
Well, again, that's not the expertise that we provide. That's why we will always do it together with a not-for-profit. We do the shelter piece, and they will do the wraparound services. So before we look at a building, before we start a building, we always find our partner first, and they tell us the demographic that they're after, and then they provide the brief to refurbish the empty building for a period of time.
So they actually tell you the demographic?
Yeah.
Wow.
We did one in the eastern suburbs with Henley Homes, an old convent that was lying empty. Peppercorn lease for $5. Henley came through and did everything, including the furniture, and now it's managed by a Good Shepherd for family violence, which includes kids.
Yeah.
So there's so much demand there's so much demand. That's all I can say. And we all need to contribute to do this, because we should be calling this as a national emergency. The trouble is we're allowing it to normalise, so therefore we accept it. But I've got no doubt, if we allow this to continue, we are heading for civil unrest, because people are going to get desperate. And to be fair to governments, they've only got 3 and 4 year terms. That's their window. Business looks at long term. This is something that business must lean in if we're going to reshape this for the benefit of our grandkids. Because the affordability thing, and this is what frustrates me with government, they make the announcement, this is not Labor or Liberal, this is across the board, right? Make this announcement, but you can't turn on a tap and produce housing. It takes a long lead time. That's why I think what we're doing is so obvious. People, I remember Wendy Harmer saying it on Sydney radio one day, talk about using these empty buildings because we're on the City of Sydney's competition. It's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? It's a short-term pressure relief valve while we build the housing our country needs. And we must have a short-term relief valve. Yeah. And to me, a building lying there empty when we're in a housing crisis is just like food wastage.
Okay, so then, because what that brings to mind then, in COVID, didn't we take people off the street and put them in the housing?
In hotels.
In hotels?
Because the hotels were empty.
Okay. But the point was we could do it.
Yes, we could do it. Now, that, again, to put a whole thing in context, the hotel rooms didn't have kitchens. It's just a short-term measure. It's not a suitable long-term. But we did take them off the street.
Yeah.
So the thing is, and this is, again, going back, everyone's arguing about this 1.2 million, and let me put some numbers around this, 1.2 million homes that we're targeting across the country. Just be very clear, that's market homes. And you have people saying...
What do you mean market homes?
Homes generally that people can afford to buy.
Okay, $1.2 million.
No, 1.2 million homes. The federal government's put a target out there.
Okay.
Their objective is to try and get 1.2 million homes built by a certain time frame.
Do we know how long?
Yeah, I think it's 29, I think. I can't recall the exact time.
So 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So, but all the criticism is that they're running behind schedule. Now, what's wrong with having ambitious targets? I would rather have an ambitious target and fail and have a target that I reach easily, and therefore I'm happy. So as a country, there's nothing wrong with ambitious targets. But the point I was trying to make, that is market homes. There was a report done for the federal government in 2021 during Scott Morrison's era for the organisation called the National Housing Finance Corporation, which is now Housing Australia. And it quantified the shortfall in social and affordable housing, not market, as a $290 billion investment needed over the next 20 years. That equated to 44,500 social and affordable homes built every year for 20 years, starting from 2021. The Housing Australia Future Fund, and that's a good initiative that started the process, is aspiring to build 11,000 homes every year for 5 years. So where's the 33,500 shortfall going to come from?
You see, you're talking a lot of numbers and my mind's just...
We are still heading for disaster. We're not building enough. We're not even targeting it.
How can we put that into something succinct? Because, you are a numbers man, you're a developer, you've been in real estate. How can we language that into a very... what am I trying to say here?
Well, again... Trying to put it very simply,
yes.
There is a report done that said we need to build 44,500 social and affordable homes, which are subsidised homes, every year for 20 years. The current government is doing what they can, but they're only aspiring to build 11,000. We're 33,500 short every year just in the subsidised space. Put aside the actual other target the government set of 1.2 million, which has been public, it's been around the public. So all I'm saying, we're not aspiring to actually solve the problem by picking a target that we know is there to try and solve the problem. So we're still in catch-up mode. All that says, if you project forward, we're not only in a worse affordability problem in, say, 10 or 20 years, we're in a crisis where society's polarising. We're really heading for civil unrest.
That's the part I want to get on.
And living in a society that after our life, I wouldn't want to leave that for the kids because that's going to be too dangerous. And that's where we're all heading towards. And that's something that once you start on this journey and you realise you learn what you didn't know, you feel compelled to share it to bring others on the journey. And that is part of our objective, is to educate.
So let's go back to these services, because I have obviously done some research on this. And some of the research, it's something like 40% of people that are homeless or at risk of homelessness can't even access the services because the services just don't have enough resources to actually allow them to come into the door.
That's true.
Yeah.
One of the negatives about reusing existing buildings to shelter people is that you need a government funding for the wraparound services, and they have to find it. So it's always that is the funding part where they need money to pay the YWCA, the Salvation Army. What we do is all pro bono. In other words, we've got an existing building. Metricon mentioned we got free plaster, free ceramics, free tiles, free labour, free paint from Dulux.
Okay, so let's look at the various companies, big and small, that are contributing.
Oh, there's so many to mention, but you've got the Metricons, the Henleys, Mirvac, Better Living Group.
And what do they do?
They're all builder developers.
Okay, so they've got the builders?
Yeah,
the
then you've got
buildings?
Dulux supplying the paint for us across the country.
Yep.
We've got Linen House that do linen and bed sheets. We've got Kent Removal and Storage that are now going to move all the furniture that we need around the country.
Where's the furniture coming from?
Quest Apartment Hotels and the hotel industry, when they refurbish hotels, the furniture goes in the tip.
Yeah.
So we're now reusing all that furniture. So talk about circular economy.
Yeah.
It's about using the same resources, and we can all do it for free.
Okay.
But you ask someone for cash, that's a very difficult thing to get out of anybody.
But I also read that some of these companies, they are that word?
Philanthropy.
Thank you. Like 250,000 because money is needed to refurbish. Is that correct?
There is a lot of philanthropy out there to help some of these charities.
Yeah.
Right. But the philanthropy will never solve the problem. Philanthropy is just an incubator for innovation.
No, but in refurbishing the buildings.
Yeah, we don't use any money.
No?
Hardly any cash. Some cash, yes, because we haven't got the whole private sector on board.
Okay.
Because if every business, because this is a business issue, if every business provided their services to Housing All Australians pro bono, we could do it for nothing.
Hang on, say that again slower.
If you wanted to build a house, and all the suppliers and all the labourers said, we'll do it for free, just like Henley does every year when they do the auction for the Good Friday appeal. It's all done for free.
Okay.
If we do that across the country, then the private sector can actually build things at no cost, right? Now, it'll never solve the problem, but it shows government that we don't need them. And what does reverse psychology say? Well, then government comes and says, well, how do we help you?
But it does solve the problem short term, does it not?
For some. But we need to do it at scale. This is a scale problem. Australia's got 122,000 people that are deemed to be homeless by the ABS.
So what comes to question in my mind is, with all that you're doing out there and achieving with these corporations and small businesses, is it in some way, shape or form assisting the government to relook in a positive way because I'm sure they've got empty buildings. So is there a knock-on effect, I guess is what I'm asking, by this compassionate capitalism?
Look, it does take time. I presented to both the Victorian Homeless Inquiry and the Federal Homeless Inquiry and told them what we're doing with these refurbished buildings. And both committees recommended to the governments at the time to look into these existing uses. I made a presentation, we did a presentation to the New South Wales government on meanwhile use, unlocking legislation to make sure these things are easier. That was probably 4 years ago. And now New South Wales is engaging with us to explore meanwhile use as a way of short-term shelter. And so we are engaging with governments across the country.
Okay.
It does take time because there's politicians, there's bureaucracy, and then there's the private sector. We are running far, far ahead of them, and they're just trying to catch up now.
How do you, because you're an impatient man, how do you manage your mindset, your emotions, when sometimes you must go?
Well, the way we first started this is I'm over-waiting for government.
Okay.
Right? That is the thing. We can't afford to wait for government.
So you just don't focus on that anymore?
No. No,
Okay.
we get out there and we just make shit happen because we haven't got time to waste. This is a disaster that's actually unfolding before our eyes.
Yeah.
But over time, when government sees there's a bit of self-interest there, they pick up their eyes and say, "Heck, we sort of help." So the governments are changing their views. I would say New South Wales is leading the pack. They are seriously looking into meanwhile use as a positive way to actually reduce homelessness. They're engaging with us in very good conversations. With Adrian Harrington, our New South Wales chair, we've actually helped to facilitate a change in legislation to make things quicker. There's still a few tweaks to be done there, but Victoria needs to do the same thing, as does Queensland, South Australia, Tassie, WA, Northern Territory, ACT. It's an issue for the country. Okay. But we are hopefully providing a positive view and an attitude of collaboration, because this has to be done by collaboration. and let's work together in the national interest. Because, I said to you earlier, we should declare war on homelessness, right? Not because it's a social issue, because it's actually an economic issue for our country. But why a war? Because during war, enemies unite.
Yeah, we come
right?
together.
We are in crisis, and we should all be leaning in to solve this, because it takes a long time.
Yeah.
To get to where we are now, it's taken 30 years. Unfortunately, it's going to take 30 to 40 years to get back out.
To fix it.
There is no short-term pressure relief valve.
Yeah.
And unless we have a long-term perspective, unless we pick the target that we need to hit, we're never going to have a strategy that actually gets us out in 30, 40 years. And it must be bipartisan.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a non-political issue.
Yeah.
It's
about
fundamental
people.
infrastructure. It's about the future of a country.
Yeah.
We believe that housing is fundamental infrastructure for a future prosperous Australia. And without it, we haven't got a country.
Well, we don't have a community
We don't.
because
we
there's
don't.
too much division. Now, you're talking about the various states. Tell me about Queensland Rail.
Well, we're doing a project in Queensland with Queensland Rail. They've had some empty buildings on Queensland Rail property that now we are refurbishing, and it's for vulnerable women. Even though we're agnostic as to which cohort we help, vulnerable women seem to be the one that's always on top of the list by all the not-for-profits. So we're doing that in Western Australia with Uniting. We did it in Tasmania with Vinnie's and Bethlehem House. We did it in Victoria with the YWCA twice, actually. One Better Living Group with the community, Southport Community Centre, which is both men and women. We did one with the Eastern Suburb for women and children, and we did one in St Kilda with Mirvac for young kids under 25.
Okay.
They all need shelter, and these are all buildings that were sitting empty. In South Melbourne, we had 31 apartments were sitting empty. We had Better Living Group come down. We were on current affair with all their staff on a Saturday to start works.
I watched it.
It would have cost $700,000. We used 50 grand cash, and that was donated by a philanthropist.
Yep.
And the Southport Community Centre, those people are loving it, because otherwise where would they be? And we can do this across the country.
Well, you started Housing All Australians in 2019?
Yes.
Yep.
There was three of us who started, to be fair.
Yeah.
Myself, Lisa Kingman and Louise Rutten. We're all there forming the organisation.
Yep.
Some of the stuff happened before, but we've evolved into a national organisation with a national board. We've now got subcommittees, because again, at the end of the day, there's economic studies, there's private sector instruments. There's quite a few things to do, but we are very, very focused on the housing.
Yeah, but 2019?
2019 is, yes.
So 2019 to present time,
Yeah.
how many, give us the big picture of how many people have had a roof over their head because of what you've all achieved so far.
Let me answer the question in a different way. Is that we've provided over 133,000 room nights for people across this country at no cost to government. And we gave it to not-for-profits because they actually manage the people.
Do we know how many people that resulted in? When we say 133 room nights, my brain goes, yeah. But my part of me wants to go, how many people?
It varies because, again...
Yeah. Can we get a rough idea?
With the YWCA, as I said, 32 rooms helped over 140 women in 4 years.
Yep.
Some will stay there for a long time.
Yes.
And some will stay there for a short time. They just need the stability and safe place. So in terms of people, I don't have the number. We count lots. Because the CEO of Launch Housing recently has quantified that if they had to actually use hotel rooms, that would be over $25 million of taxpayer money.
Wow. Okay.
And we've only just started.
Yeah.
This has got a long way to go.
Yeah.
There's more people approaching us every day.
You're still just toddling, aren't you?
Well, we do, because you don't know a building's empty until someone says, hey, have a look at that building, it's empty.
Well, that's one of the things with your website, pop-ups with purpose. In asking people to contact you when they're going on their walks or whatever, they see a vacant building, just call it.
Well, you should
talk about that.
You should mention a bit about how we met, because I had a radio national interview, which you heard me speak, and that's how we resulted in this conversation. But I can tell you from that conversation, we've got things happening in Geraldton. There's something just outside the ACT where people have actually walked past and said, this old hospital's been empty for so long. So through that publicity, people are reaching out. Not everything's suitable, but they are reaching out and saying, we're aware of this thing here.
Yeah.
We need to have a national movement supported by each state government and the federal government. Let's locate these empty buildings. Let's see how much work is there to be done. Let's refurbish them, take people off the street, give them a safe place to call home, and they could then become productive citizens. That's the whole objective, is a roof over someone's heads. They've got a greater chance of becoming eventual taxpayers than tax recipients with the unintended consequences and welfare payments.
Absolutely. Look, as a facilitator and trainer for 30 plus years, and I often use the line from the boardroom to the jailhouse and most points in between, because they're the places I've taken my trainings. And a lot of those trainings have been people chronically long-term unemployed. And until people have until people have a roof over their head, there is no way in the world that they can truly put that effort in to be able to shower, to go for interviews, to be able to put food on the table. So just getting back to asking people to notify you if there's a vacant building, because I sometimes hear people say, over the years I've heard this, and I hear people complain, oh, that building's there for years and blah, blah, blah. And I often say, can we please stop fueling the problem and start looking at what are the solutions? And that's what I hear what your organisation is doing. And are you getting more and more businesses coming to you and asking, please, how can we help? Can you talk more about those?
Well, the more exposure we get, the more people reach out to us and say,
Yep.
how can we help you?
Yep.
And there's a lot of conversations happening. In fact, as I said, we just had one last week with Kent Removals. They saw what we were doing. They came to a function. They said, our values align. How do we help you? And then when I met the MD, he said, Rob, I'm all on board. We're all across the country, because private sector companies can make decisions straight away.
Yep.
Public companies who we are talking to take a bit of time to go through their processes.
Yep.
But it's all about value alignment.
Yep.
And I think compassionate capitalism captures the values of the majority of Australian businesses. Profit and purpose are not mutually exclusive, and you can run a successful business and give back. But the ultimate benefit that drops out is that staff get so engaged. Staff get more engaged with doing things for free than doing things for profit. And that's where that balance comes across, and that's how we build community, that's how we build belonging, and that's how we build loyalty. It's actually a win-win-win. It's a bit of a no-brainer, to be quite frank with you.
Well, as you possibly know then, because you used the word belong, we actually have two primary needs. We have the need to belong, as in being part of, family, community, whatever, and the need to contribute. So, there are so many people out there who maybe aren't working at the moment, they're looking for employment or, whatever. Is there any way that they can contact you to assist in some way?
The thing we have to always say is everything we look at it is how do we do it at scale?
Yep.
Right? Individuals with their well-meaning intent, they say,
Yep.
I'm happy to volunteer. Well, we've got to do things with a licensed builder. They need to have licensed trades. As much as people can actually help, it becomes problematic because we have to do this at scale.
Yeah.
So the aim is really the corporates that have, and it doesn't matter what business you're in. One of the projects we had a local cafe run by a church that came down to feed everybody after work. Right? So everyone can take part in this process.
Yep.
We can all contribute in some way, shape or form to reshaping business as business actually cares. And that is something that everyone can actually do. And I'm sort of encouraging people to reach out. With regards to the buildings though, because we come from a building developer background, not every building suits, right? Because we are doing this pro bono. If the building's too dilapidated, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But if one requires a paint job, right, or carpet and doesn't require much work, and we have to do that value assessment, then we go ahead and get it done.
Flooring?
Flooring, Interface provides all our tiles.
Okay.
Right, four tiles.
Yeah.
So the more corporates that come on board and we have this database, then we can just call them up in respective states where we found a building and just make it happen. And that's the beauty of the private sector, in my view.
So when this was first conceived in 2019, and it's now 6 years later, and I know that you're a very, left brain, let's get it done bloke, but have you sat back recently and gone, oh my gosh, like have you looked at it from that human aspect of, because what you're doing is huge.
Look, we've got a long way to go. I don't sit back and reflect because, again, we've got a long way to go. But there are some emotional moments that sort of you do reflect on. And in fact,
Okay, tell me.
one of the things I'd like your listeners to do is look up the documentary Undercover.
Yep.
That's now on Netflix.
Which I've watched it, by the way. Amazing. Yep.
Narrated by Margot Robbie. And it's a story about women over 50 becoming the fastest growing kind of homeless. Directed by Sue Thompson, and Adam Farrington Williams was the producer. I'm in there a little bit, but it's all about women. But why I'm saying that is that there was one, when we were filming in one of our buildings, the Lake House, and, you know, there was a lady there and she said to me, and sometimes I still get a bit emotional, she said, can I give you a hug?
Oh,
And I said, sure, I'm Italian, right? I'll just give her a hug. So I gave her a hug. And she didn't want to let go.
wow. How did you feel?
Well, I still feel a bit emotional and teary about it because you don't think about these things. But hugs free. And how much value did that give that person? What did it cost me?
Yeah.
Right? But she just didn't want to let go.
Yeah.
So those sort of moments there make me think that we're doing some good things, but I've got no time to waste. We're here for a short time.
I love it.
Let's make a difference, and everyone's doing this together. It's not me, by the way. There's a whole
I understand
organisation,
that.
and there's people behind it. So it is becoming a national private sector movement.
Rob, I understand that, but guess what? You are the driver of this. And it's okay sometimes to just go, wow. You know?
I can do that. They can
I'll
do
do
that
it
after
for-
I'm dead,
I'll do
right?
it for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, we've just got to look. It's the more you learn, the more you think we have to do something because our grandkids are going to be living in a different world, and we're so unique with Australia. We're an island. We've got food. We've got some. We have to set our future up. And everyone must have fundamental human needs met, which is shelter.
Yes.
That way they can become productive citizens.
Yes.
And if we were starting Australia today, the first thing you do, the same as a mining company, what's the first thing miners do? Build housing. You must have that fundamental human need met. But because we live in a market, people think, oh, the market will solve the housing problem. Not if it's uneconomical.
No.
And we've had market failure in that uneconomic bit, and that's where government must step in. And yes, we've had some issues with costs and building costs, and we've had a bit of a bad patch, right? So things are not economically viable today, right? This is when government should step in because we cannot not build sufficient housing during a housing crisis.
I'll leave that to you with the government. I want to come back to Undercover.
Yeah.
How was that conceived? Who came up with doing that doco?
Well, it wasn't me. I was just, again, through that serendipitous events.
Yeah.
The EA I was using at the time knew the producer and anyway, just the way that life works.
Yeah.
So I was approached and said, do you want to be involved in this film? We got to do it about what you guys are doing. But eventually it morphed into actually doing a story about women over 50. And Sue Thompson wanted specifically to do something about women. She's been dying. So again, a confluence of opportunities, just like this meeting, that result in they're now close friends now in doing a documentary called Undercover. They've just done one called Careless, that's also going to be, which is about the aged care system, a beautiful documentary that ended up being, and it wasn't started off this way, a story about Sue and her mum, who's entering into that retirement age and the whole aged care system. Because it's all about fundamental human needs, shelter. It comes back to shelter. So, look, I just encourage any corporate out there that wants to contribute to help in a small way Australia's housing crisis, not for them, but the future of our country and for their grandkids, because otherwise we are heading for disaster.
Yeah. So, Rob, tell me a little bit more about Housing All Australians. Like, do you have employees? Tell us.
Well, Housing All Australians is a private sector initiative looking at housing and its connection to homeless through an economic lens.
Yeah.
Right, because we represent business.
Yep.
We've been pro bono when we've got probably about 50 people that are actually working with us in every state and territory except Northern Territory, working in between their day job.
So hang on. So you have 50 people
at least, yes.
That volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely. At least. And that's not counting the specific projects that happen.
But people that within your organisation. So, I mean, would they be putting in, I don't know, 10, 20 hours a week? Like, Build the picture here.
It varies. Each state's got a management committee.
Right.
It's managed by a chair.
Yeah.
And that's probably, New South Wales probably got about 7 people in that committee.
Wow.
Queensland's the same. Tassie a little bit less. WA, and we've got a national board. Right. And this is all people that are giving up their time during their day job to fit this in because they think it's important. But we got to a point where it became so overwhelming, the board decided we better put someone on full time.
Yep.
So we put our full-time employee, who's Dan McKenna, who used to be Nightingale Housing, which is another disruptor, used to be CEO there, as the CEO of Housing All Australians, and one other person, which happens to be my daughter, with regard to marketing and social media.
Okay.
They're the only 2 employees. But we're reaching a scale now that if we want to continue, we need to raise some funds. This is the only time we want cash to help put more people on, because we're finding that the momentum in the private sector is quite, it's insatiable.
Okay.
But then you need people to actually manage all the projects to make sure they go smoothly. And you need to put someone on full time to manage that. And that's something that we're actually doing. So we've currently created a fundraising committee. The purpose of that committee is to raise funds specifically for the management and administration of the organisation. Because the fundamental principle is we all put our time in, our products in, for free. It is our contribution to Australia's housing crisis.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you're not getting paid.
No.
You haven't been paid for 6 years.
I'm not interested in being paid.
No,
It's something that we're doing.
Yeah,
because we feel it's important.
I understand that. But you see, I would think there's a perception out there that people would have naturally assumed that you would have been getting a wage. Now, no, please allow me. This is really quite huge, Rob, because what you've created really is coming from here. And I don't know that people would know that.
But see, people have a misconception of the private sector. They think they're all greedy bastards. When the reality is 5% have tarnished everybody, and everyone else has been too busy working to realise that the brand's been tarnished.
Yeah.
We care.
Yeah.
Business cares. And we need to reposition business as an intrinsic part of the community that want to give back and contribute for the long-term success of this country. There's too much fighting, and it all comes down to the lack of one thing: trust. Progress only moves at the speed of trust. And until we develop that trust, we never get anywhere. So we're out to reposition us as people you can trust. We do want this in the interest of the housing. Yes, there's going to be people out there that are cynical. It's all about private sector. Sure, there's something in it for you. You're getting a kickback here. Well, I'm going to say I've just had enough of that shit, to be quite frank.
Do you get that thrown at you?
Oh, yes, you do, and you just ignore it. Because,
really, you do though.
Well, some people had on LinkedIn, why is the bank doing that? Oh, it's self-interest. And look, everyone's got a self-interest. People have got a self-interest to keep their job too, right? Self-interest is not a bad thing when it gets exploited.
I just didn't think that you would have got flack given what you're doing.
Oh, yeah. People are cynical.
Okay.
That's a general thing, cynical, but you don't let the 1% affect the impact you do.
How many hours a week roughly? And how long's a piece of string? I know, I knew you were going to do this.
Well,
come on, roughly.
Well, look, this is an obsession, not a passion. It's an obsession.
A passionate obsession.
Yeah, and when I do discuss, when I do things, it's a 24/7 obsession, and I do things on weekends when my wife says, stop working. I say, I'm not working. I'm just doing things that I like. And that's the fortunate part of my career, actually, is I've just been doing things I like. So, but it is an obsession, and it has to be, because otherwise you got to push through all the naysayers, because there's so many reasons why you can't do things. And there's been so many people saying it, but I go back to 3 words that I've told my kids. One, you must be curious. You must always ask and say why. Curious. The second one is you need to believe in something and not let people push you aside if you believe in something. But the last one's the most difficult one. It's persistence. Because unless you persist through all the naysayers, you get stopped at the first hurdle. Doesn't matter how great your idea is, nothing actually happens.
And you are so persistent.
Well, I'm obsessed now. I've got to have to recognise that.
Okay, as we finish the conversation, I'd love you to look at the camera, and I'd like you to tell our viewers whatever you would like them to think, do, believe, but from here.
Australia's housing crisis is too big for government to solve on their own. It is a community problem, and that includes business. Everyone can be part of this solution while we reshape this conversation in the national interest and in the interest of future generations. Doesn't matter how small you think you can contribute, we've all got a role to play because we cannot afford to wait for government.
Robert Pradolin, thank you so much. You know, it's only 2 weeks tomorrow that I heard your conversation on ABC radio and contacted you via LinkedIn because I thought, I've got to have this guy on.
Well,
And I thought we're going to do it next year because you're in Melbourne.
Well, I just happen to be in Sydney.
And it's like, and then Michael, our wonderful videographer, was available. And of course, here at 33 Foster Street, Surrey Hills, with Tim Kennedy. So, you know, it's been a team, as it always is. What's that saying? It takes a team to create a dream. And that's what you're creating.
Well, again, it's many people involved now, but they've got a belief. And we're tired of waiting. We have to do something because you can sit there saying, it's government's job. And what happens? A little bit.
Robert Pradolin, thank you so much. And thank you for creating Housing All Australians.
Thank you for the opportunity to share the story.
You're very welcome. Okay, so that's a wrap up for this particular conversation with Rob. We've got so many amazing, amazing conversations for a better world coming up. And if you're someone that knows, I don't know, a person out there that's got it, what was it, the obsession, the something obsession?
What's that?
We said, what did we call it? Debbie, what did we call that? Michael, what did we call the obsession?
Oh, passion obsession.
Passionate obsession. Then please contact me. My website, robynwalker.net, because it really is about bringing these conversations. There are so many things out in the world happening and we think we're all so different. And yet it's our humanity that it brings us together. It's what combines us. It's what makes us a village, locally and globally. So please, would love to hear of other guests like Rob that we can have these conversations for a better world. Thank you so much. I'm Robyn Walker. Stay well.